Hey everybody, my name is Lynn Hayes. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the astrology of November 16th through the 23rd. I'm filming this video on Thursday, and we had the election, of course, on November 3rd, and I'm filming the video on the 12th, and there is still not a really clear concession from the president, and it still is unclear what's really going to happen. This is not really surprising to me or to anybody who was following the astrology of what was going to happen, and you can look back through the last several videos if you'd like to know more about that. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the election, but I do want to talk a little bit about some important time periods that are coming up that will likely affect how smoothly this all goes. The first thing I should mention is that last week we had the final phase of the conjunction from Jupiter to Pluto, and this cycle began last April. I've been talking about it a lot. The conjunction of Jupiter to Pluto in Capricorn was part of the triple conjunction, which included Saturn. And Capricorn, of course, is the sign where we create structures to underpin our lives. Capricorn is all about building strong structures that will support us. And Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And you may remember that was the year of the financial collapse. So that's another story for another time. We have had Saturn and Pluto within a couple of degrees of a conjunction all year, and Jupiter has been in there too. So Saturn now, having turned direct, is moving through the very last degrees of Capricorn. It will move into Aquarius in December, which is a few weeks from when I record this video. The conjunction from Jupiter to Pluto has a great deal to do with ideologies. It has much to do with the kind of meaning that we create in our own life, how we feel about our beliefs, and this idea of defending beliefs is very strong right now. There doesn't seem to be a lot of facts that are in agreement between many different sides. Everybody has their own idea of what's true and what's not true. And I'm blaming a lot of this on Jupiter and Pluto conjunction. I hope that after this conjunction is over, things are going to start to settle down. But we still have some hurdles that we need to get through. The next thing that happened last week is that Mars turned direct. So Mars has been retrograde for the last few months, along with many other planets that were retrograde. There's been a huge number, as you may know. And with Mars turning direct, we're down to just 3 planets that are retrograde, and Neptune's going to turn direct in a couple of weeks, and then we're only going to be down to 2. There's going to be a lot more forward momentum now. I think we're already seeing it, already feeling it. I hope you're starting to feel it in your own life. I know we've all been feeling so much like we're just on pause and like we're kind of stuck. We can't really get things moving. And I feel like that's going to let up some. But back to some post-election dates, there's just a couple of other things I want to mention. On December 14th, which is the day the Electoral College meets in the United States, we have a solar eclipse. Now, this solar eclipse in Sagittarius at the new moon is sitting right on Donald Trump's eclipse in his natal chart. I'll put up a chart so you'll see how this will work. So when an eclipse falls on a sensitive point in our own charts, often something is activated. There's some kind of release. You know, eclipses are big triggers. So sometimes there's something that we have to let go of. Sometimes there's something brand new that just sort of explodes in our face, or some new opportunity that's given to us, especially if it's a new moon rather than a full moon as this is. But because it sits right on Trump's eclipse, it's just so hard to say what's going to happen. His moon will have progressed into Scorpio by then, and his progressed moon has been in Libra for the last couple of years. Normally, the progressed moon in Libra really wants to kind of reach across the aisle and be diplomatic and more tactical. Tactful is the word I was looking for. Tactful. And we don't really see that with this president, and it's not surprising because Mars is conjunct his ascendant. He was born under an eclipse. He's really meant in this life to create a big splash, and he certainly has. So this is not a partisan video. Please don't leave nasty comments for me. But when Trump's progressed moon moves into Scorpio, which is a sign where we hold on to grudges, where we want to hold on to power, where we're very sensitive to who has power and who doesn't have power, this could be a difficult time if he has not, by that point, conceded the election. And I know there's a lot of my readers and viewers who are Trump supporters, and I always want to be sensitive to that when I talk about this. I know a lot of people don't want him to give up. That's all I'm going to say right now about the election, but there's a few other things I want to talk about before we talk about the astrology for the week. I would like to just kind of drop a little bomb and say that when we have a major planetary cycle like the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, even the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, these events may not last for a long time, but they can create changes that last for hundreds of years. As an example, and I've talked about this before, the conjunction of Saturn to Pluto in Capricorn last occurred in 1518. That's the year that Martin Luther challenged the Catholic Church, beginning the whole Protestant Reformation, which then in turn brought about hundreds of years of conflict between Catholics and Protestants. That conjunction may have only lasted a year, but the fallout lasted for a very long time. And a lot of these changes are permanent. We're talking about Capricorn, which is the very structures that we build our lives on. That doesn't mean that we're going to have a few hundred years of conflict, and I don't want to frighten anybody, but I do want to just mention that because a lot of people are always asking me, when is all this going to end? And I can't say, oh, Jupiter and Saturn are both going into Aquarius in December. This will all be over. No more virus, no more political conflict. I think it's probably not going to take place like that. However, the other thing I just want to mention is just as with planetary cycles in our own lives, these cycles don't cause disasters in themselves. But what they will do is they'll expose something that really needs to be changed. In our personal life, if we have a Saturn transit, if we're working hard, our structures are in place, a Saturn transit can actually bring great success. We see that with Saturn returns. Look at all the people that won their first Oscar, won their first Grammy. In any case, there are certainly things in the political structures all around the world in most countries that are unfair, that are somewhat brutal. We have a population explosion, we have climate change, there's going to be this climate refugee problem. We really need to build solid structures that will accommodate all of these situations, or we are going to continue to have some issues. I spoke a few moments ago about the fact that Neptune is going to turn direct. It's been retrograde for some time, as it is every year for about 6 months, and it's not traveled more than 2 degrees for the past month or so. So Neptune is pretty much stationary in the sky, kind of shining this laser beam of Neptunian energy. Neptunian energy is about letting go of the mundane world. It's about inspiration, imagination, creativity, spirituality. With this strong Neptune influence, though, we can sometimes find ourselves being confused as the structures and the details of the world become more blurry under Neptune's influence. We sometimes can be kind of confused, and we start to see things that might be illusory. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful if I did this or that? So we have to really keep our eyes open and make sure that we don't fall into the land of fairy where we might fall asleep for 100 years, like Rip Van Winkle did. But in any case, Neptune is going to barely move for the next month or so. So if Neptune's hitting a sensitive point in your chart, you may be feeling this. One symptom of a Neptune transit is feeling sort of lethargic. It's not like a Saturn transit, which can feel heavy. Under a Saturn transit, we sometimes feel like we've got a super heavy lead blanket on us. Neptune is more like, oh, it's just a little dreamy. And sometimes we can't really muster up the enthusiasm to get anything going. But with Mars turning direct, having been retrograde for the last couple of months, Mars is going to be picking up speed. It'll start to inspire and motivate us. We mostly have smaller planetary alignments this week. We don't have any of the really big planetary cycles like we have had the past couple of months. We do have 2 planets changing sign, or rather 1 planet and 1 luminary. So Venus is going to move from Libra into Scorpio on the 21st, and the Sun is going to move from Scorpio into Sagittarius on the 21st. The Sun, as you probably know, moves through 12 zodiac signs in a year. And as the Sun moves through these signs, there's sort of a lens that we all see the world through. These lenses occur on different levels. So as the Sun goes through the signs of the zodiac, that kind of puts a filter in front of our eyes on how we see the world. When the Sun goes through Scorpio, we see it more deeply, more intensely, more passionately. When the Sun then moves into Sagittarius, as it will this week, then there's kind of a lift. Sagittarius being much less concerned about what's going on under the surface and much more interested in knowledge and learning and what's the truth and what are my goals and what are my dreams. When the moon goes through different signs, and I always track the moon for you all so you can sort of plan your week based on where the moon is. Those are faster moving cycles, and they have more to do with our mood and less to do with the way we see the world, which is what the solar transits indicate. With Venus moving from Libra into Scorpio, we are moving into a time when our relationships are going to become more important on a deeper level. Venus in Libra is much more forgiving because it's the relationship that's important. It's being polite. It's making everybody happy. It's making sure that there's harmony between people. When Venus goes into Scorpio, we see our relationships with people differently. This is true for all of us. Of course, those of us like me with Venus in Scorpio are very familiar with this and we live with it all the time. But when Venus is in Scorpio in the sky, we all are seeing our relationships, the things we value through that lens. Venus in Scorpio usually is very good for the stock market. Now, the stock market has been crazy over the last year. I had predicted a crash, and there was a crash. What I didn't predict was this insane comeback. And some astrologers have related that to the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which of course is now over. But Venus is the sign that has to do with our values, our prosperity. Venus in Scorpio, the sign of investing, the sign of sharing our resources with others in intimate ways. That could be very good for the markets. So I think with that, we're ready to jump into the week ahead. On Monday, November 16th, we start the week with the moon in Sagittarius. The moon in Sagittarius tends to bestow general feeling of goodwill and positivity. The moon is in a fire sign, just as Mars is, so that means that the moon will form a trine to Mars that morning of the 16th, which is Monday, Eastern Standard Time. Please adjust for your own locality. And I'll put a link to a time converter that I found very easy to use in the description box. Also on Monday the 16th, Venus, which is still in Libra for the early part of the week, is going to form challenging squares to Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. So the square from Venus to Pluto actually occurs on Sunday the 15th, which is before this video will drop, but it will still be in effect on Monday the 16th. When Venus in Libra, which is still polite, it hasn't made it into Scorpio, so Venus in Libra likes harmony and doesn't really want to rock the boat. But when Venus is in a square to Pluto, that intensifies all of our interactions. It can cause some disruption, it can cause some outbursts. All of a sudden you might say something that you do really mean, but normally you wouldn't say. This only lasts for a day or two. On Tuesday morning around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the moon is going to move into Capricorn. Please adjust for your own locality. I'll leave a link in the description box to make that easy to do. When the moon is in Capricorn, we become much more focused on the things that need to be done. The things that we have to do, our duties, our responsibilities to other people, to our jobs, to our goals, all of this becomes more important. Capricorn's very pragmatic, very practical, not emotional. But the moon, of course, is the luminary that has to do with emotions. It opens up the heart. It reveals the soul's innermost desires. When the moon is in Capricorn, we can all be a little more cold and calculating. And after the moon goes into Capricorn, so this is Tuesday, maybe midday, Eastern time, the moon will form a square to Chiron. Chiron is the planet of wounding and healing, and Chiron has to do with old wounds that get lodged in the body's energy system, and they need to be released at some point. And when any planet squares or opposes Chiron, or if Chiron is triggering something in our own chart, there can be some sensitivity that may erupt because there's an old wound that's ready to be released. It's like something happened, we didn't want to think about it, we didn't want to talk about it, we tried to forget about it, then some kind of chironic event will happen and all of a sudden it's in your face. And we can think of that as a bad thing because it's not comfortable, but it can also be a really good thing because when these things come and we have to look at them, that's when we can really release them and process them and figure them out. So this is a lunar aspect. It only lasts for a couple of hours, but everybody has the potential to experience this. So even if you yourself are not triggered by some old emotion, you may run into somebody who is. So let's all be a little extra compassionate with each other on that day, even if the moon is in Capricorn. Then late in the evening, really the night, Wednesday the 18th, Eastern time zone, and early in the morning on Thursday the 19th, the Capricorn moon is going to transit over the Capricorn planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. This, I feel, is a time of great strength. We have 3 planets in Capricorn. This is all about building. You know, Capricorn really inspires us to build something for the future. It's very practical. It has a lot to do with money and prosperity. Capricorn really inspires us to master the material world. So when the moon is in Capricorn and it transits these Capricorn planets, there can be a strong integration of all of this Capricornian energy. If you have goals and if you have concrete ideas for how you want your life to begin to unfold now, which I hope you all do, because without a map, how are we going to know where we're going? In any case, this is a very good time to create that map with the moon in Capricorn transiting these Capricorn planets. And Thursday morning, November 19th, the sun is going to form a sextile to Saturn. Saturn being the ruler of the Capricorn planets, then the sun illuminating the Saturnian energy of focus and discipline and hard work. This is another aspect that can really help us with this idea of setting goals, looking to the future, developing strong, cohesive strategies for how we are going to move forward. It's not enough just to have a dream or just to have an idea or to read The Secret. It's also important to have a strategy for how you're going to get to where you're going. I can have a dream, I want to go to California. That's not going to get me to California. I have to sit down with a map. I have to put the key in the ignition or start the car anyway. In today's world, there is no ignition. I have to start driving towards where I'm going or I'm not going to get there. So this is a really good time to set that goal, have that picture, and think about the concrete aspects of where it is that you want to go and what it is that you want to do. Also on Thursday, we have the final transit of Venus to the Capricorn planets. This time, Venus is in a square to Saturn. Venus-Saturn contacts aren't really that great for relationships. Under the influence of Saturn, we often want to spend more time by ourselves. It can be a solitary influence, and so we have Venus, the planet of interrelating, and a challenging aspect to Saturn, the planet of solitude and hard work, discipline, and structure. It might be not the best time to plan a party or to have some kind of difficult conversation with your spouse. It's a very good time to plan to be on your own, maybe doing something creative, which Venus always inspires. Something like that is well suited for this day. And then Venus is going to be done with the Capricorn planets as it finishes its transit through Libra. It's going to move into Scorpio, and we're going to have this shift into greater passion, greater meaning in our relationships, maybe less politeness, but more reality, more real, true connection. Also on Thursday the 19th, the moon moves into Aquarius at 3:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the moon moving from Saturn-ruled Capricorn to Saturn-ruled Aquarius. They're both ruled by Saturn. They both have kind of a coldness a little bit of a hardness, but where Capricorn is about doing, it's about action, it's about structure, earthy, practical things, Aquarius is about ideas. The focus is more on invention. It's more on doing things a different way, individuality, social justice, being concerned about equality. Aquarius is not an emotional sign. It's an air sign of detachment and reason. When the moon travels through Aquarius, we do tend to be more detached. We are less emotional. There's less personal connection, but there's more of a sense of a greater perspective. What's the fair thing to do, not the thing that I really feel like I want to do for this person because I love them or I have these strong feelings. Aquarius just sees the situation very rationally and uses reason. As the moon moves through Aquarius, it's going to harmonize first with Chiron, which is in Aries, and then with Mars, which is in Aries. On Friday, November 20th, there's a lot of positive energy with all of this fire. But then later that day, Eastern Time, the moon is going to form a square to Mercury in Scorpio, where the Aquarius moon is detached and very rational, as I said. Under Mercury in Scorpio, we're much more passionate, very emotional. The emotions are the important thing. Reason has nothing to do with it. So there's a conflict there for a few hours in the afternoon and evening of Friday, November 20th. Saturday, November 21st, we have these two sign shifts. We have Venus moving from Libra into Scorpio, as I said, and we have the Sun moving from Scorpio into Sagittarius. When any of the planets or luminaries change signs, there is a shift in the energy. Around 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, November 21st, the moon will form a square to the sun. This is the waxing square of the cycle. The waxing square and the waning square of any cycle tend to bring some sort of conflict or crisis that needs some kind of resolution. With the lunar cycle, we tend to pay more attention to the new moon and the full moon. The new moon being the sun-moon conjunction, and the full moon being the sun-moon opposition. We often don't pay any attention to the waxing and the waning squares, but these are points of adjustment, and because of what's happening in the world today, I feel that this is probably going to be a significant time. The sun will have just moved into Sagittarius, the moon will have just moved into Pisces, so not only is it the waxing square, but the sun and the moon and Venus have both made this shift. Watch for this time around November 21st to get a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a push energetically to help to inspire change and the unfolding of something new. On Sunday, November 22nd, Mercury in Scorpio is going to be moving into an alignment, a trine to Neptune in Pisces. That trine doesn't really perfect until Monday. I really love these trines to Neptune as a person who attempts to be creative. These Neptunian, dreamy, imaginative influences can really help us to sort of break out of our structured rut that we may be in. I know I find myself in that place quite often. I want to wake up at 6 o'clock and then I want to do 23 minutes of yoga. I'm exaggerating, but that's kind of the way that I like to live my life. But I also want to be creative, and sometimes all that structure can kill the creativity. So here's Mercury in Scorpio, which is so rich with imagery and with passion and drama, and it's harmonizing with Neptune. So any writers, any creative people, artists, this is a beautiful time for that. And it can also just be a good time for any kind of conversation. You know, we tend to be able to communicate more easily when Neptune is trine Mercury. It can be a very good time for problem solving because of this creative influence. It may not be the best time for details and for structure, but it's a very good time to think imaginatively, to think outside of the box, to maybe have a dream or some sort of vision that inspires and helps to drive something beautiful in your life. And what better place to end a video than right there? So thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a great week. I'll look forward to seeing you next week. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them for me. I love to know who's here, who's joining me, and what you think of the videos. So thanks again. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.